Well, good morning, or afternoon, or evening, everyone, depending what time you're watching today's show. This is what we call our annual budget meeting for the residents, and so we'll be talking about our 2022 budget. But I think by popular demand, most residents call it the What's My Increase Going to Be meeting. And so before you hear what that's going to be, of course, I got to put you through about a half hour of facts and figures to keep you in suspense until we get to the magic number, right? And I think we did a pretty good job this year, so I think overall folks will be pleased. But before I get going, I do want to thank the Channel 88 crew that's here putting this all together, the amount of time and energy, effort, the technology that's being used right now. It's really quite something, and this is a first in the history of EVC, that's for sure. So thank you, team. And then, of course, our studio audience today, we have Linda and Ray and Mary, who are here to at least be an audience. I have somebody to talk to, so thank you for that. And otherwise I'd be talking at the wall. And then we'll have a little time for some questions and answers at the end, assuming I might have missed something along the way in the presentation. So, no further ado, I guess we'll get going. So what we'll do for the sake of this meeting or presentation is we'll basically talk about how we put the budget together and just some very elementary and easy to understand terms, and then talk about what drives revenue, what drives expenses, talk about some capital projects, and then we'll kind of walk back through memory lane and talk about what the historical annual fee increases have been, and then I'll give you the final number of what the 2022 increase will be. So the first thing we'll talk about is the revenue side of the equation, and for those of you in the audience, where does our revenue come from? It comes from occupancy, census, who lives here, right? So that's what drives it. So the first part of the budget process really is for us to make an assumption, for the coming year, what is our occupancy going to look like? And of course, here at the Village, we have 4 levels of care that we have to think about. So independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing. And all of them are very different and have acted and behaved very different, throughout this pandemic. Independent living, thankfully, all during the pandemic, our occupancy in independent living has been strong. And year to date, our occupancy has been 97.4 versus a budget of 96.9. And so that's been very strong. It's held up pretty much all year. And so the Village, I'd say we did better than most CCRCs across the country from the statistics I've been reading, so we're very fortunate that way. And then also in general terms, independent living communities have fared a little bit better in the way of occupancy throughout the pandemic. So we did very well, and so based on that, so our budget was 96.9, and we've been running year to date at the end of September 97.4. And year to date, we've had 23 resales, which is just a few less than budget, but we haven't had a whole lot of inventory to sell. And so if sometimes when we don't make our resale number, that's okay if there's not a whole lot to sell. If you go back a couple, like 2019, because COVID hit us at the tail end of 2019. 2019, we didn't sell many units at all because there just wasn't a whole lot to sell. But we built a heck of a waiting list, and I'll talk about that in a minute. As of right now, we have 7 memberships for sale, but that number last night might have ticked down to 6 because I think somebody accepted an offer. But anyway, the inventory, there's a little bit out there, just enough to keep new people streaming in at a moderate pace. As we look at 2022, so again, 2021 was a really weird year with COVID, and so looking ahead, we decided we're comfortable budgeting at 97.3% occupancy for independent living, which is a little bit higher than 97.0 that we've done historically. And so we're budgeting for 8 empty or non-revenue producing units versus 9 that we've done historically. But we feel good about that, especially because we have a very strong pipeline. We have over 70 folks that are at some stage of the approval process to move in here. And so for folks to move in, they come into tour and try and figure out what kind of unit that they want. And then, of course, we have a health screening for them, to make sure they're appropriate for independent living, and then we also have a financial screening, and then folks have to go to the doctor and get their shots and all those sorts of things. So anyway, so it can take a while to get somebody in the door, but having such a robust pipeline is just really encouraging. And that, just having so many prospects and relatively few units for sale, what's really nice is that residents who live here, when they go to sell, I can never guarantee anything, but odds are, they'll probably get top dollar for their membership when they go to sell it because of the laws of supply and demand. So we're in a pretty nice spot. Assisted living, both assisted living and memory care, struggled during the pandemic. We've since recovered. I'll get to that in a minute, but our marketing teams were working really hard, trying to attract folks to move into assisted living and memory care. Occupancy declined during the pandemic because we had a ban on admissions for a while. And we had a hard time moving people in the door, though, because either the resident or their family were really scared about what the visitation restrictions were and how long those might last. And so there's a lot of folks that were just hesitant to move in, even though they were ready and they knew it, but they were just hesitant and kind of hunkered down, hoping for the visitation restrictions to lighten up so that they wouldn't be here and be lonely and not be able to see the family and kind of be on a lockdown situation. So since those have eased up, we're doing a lot better in the realm of assisted living and memory care. We're coming out the other side of that. So we have a really good feeling for 2022 as it relates to census and assisted living, especially because we've hired a new sales counselor, Shanti, who specializes in assisted living and memory care, and she's done a gangbuster job for us. She's really shot our occupancy up over the last few months to where our 3 levels of care, between our independent sales folks and then what Shanti's done in assisted living and memory care, every week, the village takes 3 of the top 5 spots as far as highest occupancy within the entire Eschaton organization. I'm very proud of that, and I'm very proud of them for doing that. And so year to date, our census in assisted living has been 75%, so that's year to date as of the end of September versus a budget of 95.6. But we've rebounded, like I said. Occupancy recently was 97. I think we have a couple of contract signings today. And today is Friday, by the way, the 29th that I'm speaking. And so if we have a couple of signings, and so that'll leave us with just 1 available assisted living unit after that. So we're doing pretty good. And so, but we don't want to, get too cocky. And so for 2022, we're going to budget for an occupancy rate of 94.7 for the first 9 months, and then bump that up to 97.4 for the last 3 months. And so that's, having 2 empty units that don't generate revenue for the first 9 months of the year, and then just 1 for the last 3 months. And historically, we've always budgeted for just 1 empty unit in our assisted living, and that's normally bode well for us. Sometimes we might have more than 1 empty at the time, but then oftentimes we're at 100%, have more than makes up for it. Memory care. Our folks that live in independent living and assisted living, they continue to see the benefits of the services and the programming that we have available in memory care. And the crew over there really has been doing a fantastic job. Laura and her crew are just wonderful. The activity staff in memory care, if you ever have an opportunity to visit, one of your neighbors, over there, there's just always something going on, and it's alive, it's vibrant, and the residents are well cared for, and it's really rewarding to see. That's one of my favorite places to visit on the campus. It really is. And so we struggled during the year with our census there. It was year to date, as of the end of September, year to date occupancy was 71%. Versus a budget of 88. But for 2022, we're going to kind of gradually increase the occupancy over the course of the year in the budget model to where we'll start at 90 and then go up to 95. There's only 20 units, so each unit up or down is 5%, so that number moved pretty quick. But our recent occupancy there was 90%. We've had it as high as 95% in the last month or so. And we're at 85% today, but I think we got a couple of people waiting in the wings to move in. So again, memory care is going to look good in 2022, as is assisted living. In the care center, COVID's had a heck of an impact on the care center. Just the skilled nursing business has been particularly interesting this last year or year and a half. And our year-to-date census, actually, we've been doing a little bit better than we had planned for 2021. When we did the 2021 budget, knowing what had happened the year before with COVID, because, when we did the 2019 budget, we were pretty optimistic for 2020 because when COVID hit December-ish, right around the first of the year, and then we had 2020, a full year of COVID where things kind of tanked. And then we were able to adjust for that a little bit in the 2021 budget that we're in now. And and so we didn't want to get too optimistic when we did the 2021 budget, and so now we're trying to come out of that. So anyway, but year to date, our skilled nursing census has been 80.4 versus a budget of 77.4. So we're doing a little better than anticipated, which is very nice. And again, as various restrictions have eased up, and as visitation was always a big one. There was a big chunk of time. Again, it's starting to loosen up, but a lot of folks are in the hospital, and they know that once they're released, they need therapy and a variety of services. They were choosing to go home and get in-home care just for this because their family could come and see them there. Versus in skilled nursing, they weren't going to be able to see them, for such a large chunk of time. But since that eased, that's had a good impact on us. The other thing we still have to plan on for 2022, which we had to endure during this year 2021, is we have to the state requires us to keep at least one room empty in a designated red zone. So if we get a COVID patient, we have a place to put them that's already stocked up and ready to accommodate them. And so that kind of takes that room out of the inventory and keeps us from being able to hit 100% because we got to keep that bed free. So that ties our hands a little bit as it relates to revenue in the care center. But I think we'll still do pretty well. Skilled nursing revenue, not a whole lot of that is the patient paying, but it's a third party payer, typically insurance, Medicare or Medi-Cal, or an HMO or something like that. We're not expecting much in the way of rate increases from Medicare. Currently, we have a daily rate of $806, and for 2022, we believe it'll bump up to $813. So what to do with that extra few bucks, I don't know. And then Medi-Cal, we don't have the final number yet, but Medi-Cal, the daily rate is only $360. So you can see there's a big difference between Medi-Cal and Medicare. But fortunately, we don't have a high number of Medi-Cal patients here at any given time, so that doesn't impact us too much. For 2022, we're going to budget for a gradual increase over the course of the year. Starting out at about 86% and going up to about 94%, which kind of takes us from 30 units over the course of the year up to 33 units. Historically, we'd budgeted skilled nursing, in non-COVID years at 33, and so that's pretty much the sweet spot there. So we're tapering the budget up to that because again we don't want to get too optimistic, but things are starting to get back to normal. There were a lot of during the height of COVID, a lot of elective surgeries and things like that were postponed, but folks got to go in and get stuff done. Even our own staff, I have a lot more people taking leaves of absence right now. Whether it's for a week or two or three, because they didn't get anything done during 2020 or 2021, but they don't want to wait any longer. So if they need to go get their shoulder or knee or something done, they're going to do it now. And so things are starting to pick up, I think, in all age groups, and so that will have a good impact on our skilled nursing. All righty, let me take a little drink here. All righty, and the next piece of the puzzle. I was talking to Todd, our CEO, about the budget, I don't know, about a month or so ago, and he said, Greg has about 1,000-piece puzzle he has to put together over there every year. And that's a pretty good analogy. It really is a puzzle. It's a big budget. It's very thick when you have the whole thing put together. It's a lot of pages and a lot of reading. Anyway, the expense side of the equation, we're very fortunate here. Our department heads are very good at managing their expenses. Very seldom does any department go over, and when they do, there's usually a very good reason for it. Something extraordinary happened. But trying to forecast 2022, and compare it in comparison to 2021 is kind of tricky business. Historically, we look at the budget, and it's just like, okay, well, what happened this year? What are some of the little things we expect to happen, or change, and factor them in for the coming year, and it's kind of fairly easy. But so many things were just unusual this year. I think we based more things on some assumptions, versus what has happened, because what happened is just so unusual. But I think the major things that are going to impact us, over the course of the year, and what we had to factor into the budget model for 22, is the continued expense impact of the COVID 19 pandemic, with the inflation issues and the supply chain, problems. And so, if you've been to the gas pumps lately, if you've been to the grocery store, even if you just bought anything online, the prices are just going up. And so that, that impacts us as well. And there are some things we go to order them and they're not even available.
because of supply chain issues, and was in the news really well just last week, I think it was, with 140 some odd ships parked off the coast of California. They were just waiting for somebody to be available on land to unload them. And so there's a lot of stuff that's stuck in transit, even a few things we've ordered, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But costs are going up, and just the availability stuff is getting trickier and trickier. The other thing is, there's government mandates for wages and benefits, for the staff, and so those continue to play into the expense equation. And then overall wage pressures, given the current worker shortages. Right now, and again, it's all over the news, there's more jobs available than there's people willing to fill them. And so a lot of businesses are really struggling to stay open, or they've had to change their hours of operation or their days of operation because they just don't have enough staff. And the senior living industry is feeling the impact of that, very strongly. We've been very fortunate, here at the Village to be able to fill our open positions, and the team's been working really hard. And probably in the last 60 to 90 days or so, out of all the employees that have been hired Eschaton-wide, roughly half of them have been hired just here at the Village. So we're working really hard to fill the positions so that we can provide good service to all of our residents, because as you well know, if we're short one or two too many people, you feel it, right? And that's a lousy feeling. But it is hard work. There's a lot of wage pressure out there because, and let's just take the hospitality industry, which includes dining and restaurants and so forth. There's way more openings than there's people willing to fill them, right? So they're starting to goose their wages up. And so you have somebody that's looking for a job, in a restaurant type thing. Well, we're kind of competing with the restaurants a little bit, and so that's going to have an impact on wages. As nurses are getting harder and harder to come by, just because the way healthcare expands, and also because there's a lot of folks because of COVID that were in nursing that decided to get out of nursing because it was just getting to be too scary for them, and so they're either not working or they're doing something else that's less risky in their mind, and so that's putting upward pressure on nursing wages, and so. So we're doing the best we can, and we've done some adjustments, to the wages we pay the nurses, say in skilled nursing. But it's not uncommon to lose them eventually after they get a year or so's experience here to an acute care hospital where starting pay for a new nurse is $70 some odd an hour. And just the skilled nursing industry in general will never be able to compete with that. But that's typically where they go after they get some experience, and who can blame them? But there's a lot of pressure there, and so in all the departments, given that there's more jobs and there are workers, we have to keep kind of goosing the wages up to try and attract and retain people. Alrighty. Let me see. Some additional things, though. Despite those challenges, we don't plan to reduce any programs or services in 2022. We'll continue to have a few little modifications where we have to because of COVID-19, but nothing is planned in the way of takeaways. And then, of course, the home office, we send them a little envelope every month, for their assistance, and that fee staying the same, our management fee. So there's no increase in the home office overhead, which is always nice. In wages and salaries, we're budgeting for an overall increase of 4.5% for our existing positions, and those are impacted by a variety of things. First, the minimum wage is going up from $14 an hour to $15 an hour on January 1st. And so, when you have as many employees as we do at, especially, a lot of folks, where this is their first job, and, dining room servers is a good example. That many staff members, that many hours, a buck, that does add up fast. And then, of course, once you give somebody $1 an hour raise, well, that makes them a little closer in pay to whoever was the step above them, right? So somebody who was making $15 an hour, if we take somebody who's making 14 and now we bump up to 15, the existing staff cries a little bit foul, right? Because, hey, I've been here a year and a half and I make 15 and they started yesterday and they're making 15. Well, okay, so we got to goose them up. Well, and then the next step has the same argument, right? So that we got to keep, goosing, until we, kind of hit a sweet spot, to where the impact lessens. And so we got the increase of the minimum wage plus what we call the ripple. And so that puts a lot of pressure on the wages here. We also offer for our long-term staff, anybody who's been in the same position for 10 years or longer, when their reviews due, in addition to their merit increase, they also qualify for a longevity increase that, based on performance, can be anywhere from 0 to 3%. And so, let's say we have a housekeeper that's been in their position for 11 years, when it's time for their review, let's say they have a good review and they get a 3 or 4% increase, and then they get a 3% longevity increase, they got a 6 or 7% increase, and that's actually pretty darn nice and very respectable, and not a lot of businesses hand out increases that are that sizable. So we feel really good about that program, and it's been pretty popular, of course, with the staff. We're also, in 2022, doing market rate increases where appropriate, and we've even done some along the way this year. And so there's different groups of employees. I won't mention them by names, but where just the competition outside of our gates is getting stiffer, and so we have to adjust the pay scales of those of certain folks that are harder to come by, so that we can keep the ones we have, and then of course get new ones in as we need to hire new staff. And then of course, all of our existing employees, every year they get an annual review, and the increases are merit-based. And so for the merit increases, we budget 3% across the board. But for the employee, they can get anywhere from 0% to 6%, right? And so if somebody's doing their job, right on the money, they're doing exactly what their job description, asks them to do, not much more, not much less, but trust me, every job description is pretty hefty to begin with, then that's going to be probably a 3%. If they're going above and beyond, adding value somehow, they might get a 4% or 5% or even potentially a 6%, if they're a stellar performer. And then the flip side of the coin, if we have somebody who's an underachiever, they might get less than 3%. So that's kind of the range. And so again, if you have somebody who's, and we have quite a few overachievers here, you have somebody who's an overachiever and gets a 5% increase, and they've been here more than 10 years, and so they get another 3% on top of that, well, they just got an 8% increase. And actually a fair number of those happen, every year here. So that's, again, pretty sizable. I'd take 8%. Who wouldn't? Alrighty. Let me see. And then also, as we were developing the budget, we had a couple of new positions pop on the radar screen that already exist because we had to put them in place this year, but they weren't in the budget. But of course, they will be in 2022. And that's the sales counselor position for assisted living and memory care. And then a new state requirement came out. We had to have an infection control nurse that was a registered nurse, and so we created that position. Previously, we'd had an LVN that had a dual role of infection control and education, but the state wanted it to be an RN who just concentrated on infection control. So the other position, just through attrition, went away, and then we hired the RN. So it wasn't a apples to apples swap, but kind of one position went away, and a slightly more higher paid position because it's an RN, came into place. So not too bad. On the expense side too, the state of California still requires us to provide 24 hours of paid sick leave for all of our employees, including our on-call staff. So in our on-call staff, those are folks that we call, if we have a regular employee that calls in sick, or is taking a vacation day, we call one of our on-call staff to cover their shift for them, right? So the person says, oh, okay, yeah, you want me to work, day shift on Tuesday? Okay, I'll see you on Tuesday. But then if, Tuesday comes and they wake up and they don't feel good, well, that on-call person gets to call in sick, and if they still have any of those 24 hours in their bank, then we have to pay them sick time as well. And this didn't exist, several years ago. It was something new. So that really actually drove up the cost of doing business because we have quite a large number of on-call folks. So you put that all together, wages and salaries in 2022 as compared to 21 are increasing by about $444,000. And then our payroll taxes and benefits are going up by about $68,000. So that's almost in line to the jump last year from the year before, or this current year to the year before. Other expenses that factor in, the ESCON health plan, so the health plan we offer all of our employees, that's 14.75% of salaries, which is the same as 2021. So that's nice. Healthcare costs are really going up, but we've been able to maintain pretty well. Our workers' compensation insurance is 6% of salaries and has actually gone down a little bit. For this year, we had budgeted at 6.75. But here at the Village and company-wide, we promote safety a lot. We do a lot, we've increased in a number of areas our, safety, education for the staff. And so the claims are down. And so as a result, we can pay, a little bit lower in the way of premiums. So that's had a nice impact. So focus on safety is a good thing, right, Mary? All right. And then other expenses, Our supplies, we're going to increase those in the budget by 2.1%. There's many things that have gone up, more than that. But our crew here has actually gotten very good at comparison shopping, finding the best price, and over the last several months, as prices have been going up, my instructions to my managers is do what you would do at work as you would do at home, and that is, just don't call somebody and order a widget. Call around and find out who has the best price on the widget, and then order that one. But don't just go to whoever you normally went to, because they might not have the best price. And as prices escalate, and then they'll continue to over 2022, we have to make sure we're good stewards of the money that our residents pay us to reside here every month. And so I put a lot of pressure on them to contain costs and comparison shop. Morrison, we're still talking with them and to finalize the 2022 budget with them, but I think it'll turn out reasonable like it has, in the preceding several years. And probably one of the biggest things we're doing in dining services is we're going to put in what's called a point of sale system. And so, you eat in the dining room now, and the server comes to you with a pad and pencil to take your order. And so they take they go around the table, write down everybody's order, and then they got to run over into the kitchen and hang it on the wheel, so to speak, right? And then, of course, you got the poor chef that's got to sit there and try and read somebody's handwriting. And if I was a server and wrote stuff down, that poor chef wouldn't know what I wrote. And you get a plate of something that you didn't order. So that's kind of hard. But anyway, but that system of using paper and pencil actually requires an awful lot of staff to pull that off, because as soon as they take an order, they need to go hang it so that the kitchen crew can get to work on it, and then they go, take another table, and I call it the ping pong effect. There's just an awful lot of commotion in there with all that back and forth. And so we're looking at, and I'm hoping we'll have it rolled out by January, but we're looking at putting in what's called a point of sale system, which basically gives the servers an iPad-like device, and like a restaurant has. And so when they go to the table, what are you having? They just hit a button, right? And they just take everybody's order, whatever you're having, and there's even a ability to do you want a half order, a double order, or what have you. We can customize it to individual, too. And so so if they sit down, and it's a server that hasn't served Mary before, they'll be able to hit Mary's profile and see that Mary wants extra pepper and no salt, and hates swordfish and loves oranges, or whatever it is, or might be allergic to shellfish or peanuts. And so they can, help Mary wade through the menu a little bit better than maybe we can now. And so that's going to be a nice enhanced feature. But then when they're done taking the table's order, they hit the button, and bing, on the computer screen in the kitchen, there's the order. And so the servers just can go then to the next table and take their order and hit the button, and then bing, it shows up in the kitchen. And so they'll be able to take several tables worth of orders, go in, pick up several tables worth, bring them out. And as a result of that, the technology, we estimate we'll be able to have three fewer full-time equivalents to staff the dining room, because it adds that much more efficiency. It'll also have a good impact on overall dining services costs and food costs, because as everything is, ordered by the residents of the table, the system keeps track of what residents are eating, right? And so we'll know well in advance of having stuff again, what's popular and sells well, and what other things, don't sell so much, and then they can adjust their ordering, to adjust for that, so that we have the right amount of what's popular and a little bit less of, say, whatever's running, second or third place, so that we have less food waste. And so that'll be a very positive thing. So a lot of other good things will come out of the system as well. But I'm quite excited about that. So we have that to look forward to. Other purchase services, we're budgeting a 3.5% increase on purchase services. And purchase services is a long list of things in the budget, or in a lot of the financial statements that the Financial Review Committee here at the Village sees. There's like one line that says purchase services, but it includes an awful lot of things. Maintenance is a big chunk of that, but it also includes our dining services contract with Morrison, which is around $4 million a year. HVAC repairs, landscaping, our advertising and marketing programs, pool maintenance, the fire systems, activities, the entertainers that come in, even the copy machines and the printers. So it's a pretty big bucket of stuff, and a lot of that stuff's getting more and more expensive. And a lot of our vendors that come and provide services for us, repairing things, because trust me, the repair guy for the copier here is here regular. You see the Intech trucks and the fire system trucks. Well, they're in a boat just like so many other businesses of they have more jobs than people to fill them, so they got to be goosing up their wages, and we're even probably going to see some service deficits over the course of the year because there's a lot of places they just don't have staff to send us. We call and say, we need you now, and historically they've been able to send somebody now, but now it's like, I can get somebody there maybe by tomorrow night at 8. Like, well, what are we going to do now? Well, we have to figure it out. So everybody's got that tricky thing going on. But anyway, so we think, 3.5% ought to be a sweet spot there. And then the cost that came into play this past, this year, and will roll into next year and all the years forward, is K4 Connect, which I hope everybody's using the heck out of K4 Connect and is enjoying it. And we'll start relying on that more and more and reducing the amount of paper that goes out into everybody's cubbies and so forth. Because K4 Connect, as wonderful as it is, it costs us about $130,000 a year, which is a lot of money. So we need to, start finding a little value in that. So I check it every day. I always see what's on the menu. I love seeing the pictures from activities that are on there and in all the levels of care. And so it's a really cool thing, and I really like it. And I talk to residents. They like it, especially the resident directory and a lot of the other features. So it'll evolve along the way. And, I think, between today and this time next year when we're all together again, K4 will probably even look completely different than it does today, as it evolves and, and be even a better tool for everybody. But it's not inexpensive either. Utility costs keep going up, so we're budgeting for a 4.5% increase on utilities, and our total utility budget for 2022 is $1.8 million, and it's a lot of money. Utilities aren't getting any cheaper. Let me see here, and then I think I already mentioned our management fee from the home office is 6%, no change from previous years. So anyway, then, as you compare our 2021 budget to the 2022 budget, you can see revenue, we're going from about $33.9 million to $36.6, which is just shy of an 8% increase. Expenses going from $23.6 to about $24.7, which is a 4.8% increase. And to have a viable business, you always want your revenue to go up a little bit more than your expenses, otherwise you're in big trouble. So that math works all day for me. Our operating margin will go from which is you take your revenue, subtract your expenses, that gives you the operating margin, and so that's going to go from 10.2 up to 11.8, which is a 15% increase. And before you get too excited about oh my God, what a big increase! Boy, you guys must be rolling in it. Keep in mind that the 2021 budget we brought way down compared to the previous year because of all the impact of COVID, it had on occupancy and then therefore revenue. And so the 2022 numbers actually are awfully close to the 2020 numbers that we put together before COVID hit. So we're kind of just starting to get back to where we were before the pandemic was. And then our total fixed expenses are just a hair less than they were, from 5.7 and 5.769 to 5.715, so a little slight decrease on that, and that's depreciation, amortization, interest expense, and things like that. And then so our net operating income, which again we budgeted awfully low for last year because of the pandemic at 4.5 million, will bump up to 6.1 if everything goes as planned. We'll see about that in 2022, and that's a 31% increase, which again is pretty steep. And so you're probably wondering, gee, Greg, what do you do with all that money? I don't get it. We don't write the checks back, right? So where does that go? Well, that goes in the capital budget, the lion's share of it. So we kind of take that leftover, and it sits in the general Eschaton bank account. But to me, it kind of sits in our capital bucket, and that's what we draw off of to do the big projects around here, right? Which we have plenty of. And so just morphing in to talk about the capital budget plan for kind of what we've done this year and what we plan on doing in 2022. As you've seen, there's been fewer capital projects going on, in 2020 as well as 2021, especially indoor projects. And that was driven by two things. One was regulatory. They just didn't want anybody coming in the building. And then even though, that's kind of changed and it's okay as long as, we screen them, they wear a mask, they can come in. There's a lot of contractors out there now that they don't want to do business with a place that has a whole bunch of restrictions where their staff has to have the vaccine or has to show a negative COVID test to get in the door that's less than 72 hours old. And so there's some contractors that are starting to tell us, and they're probably telling hospitals and some other places, that you'll have to find somebody else because just our employees aren't doing that, or we're not going to require our employees to do that. So as much as I hope we can get done, with the couple months left in this year and in 2022, you'll see it's a pretty beefy list. I'm hoping we can find the contractors to do it all, but it's going to be tricky. And assuming we find them with the supply chain stuff, I'm hoping they can find the materials to do the jobs too. So there's a lot of moving targets for 2022, but I'll give you the utopian version and hope that it plays out. Also, we do the capital projects and related expenses without impacting your monthly fees. So as we do projects, that doesn't have any wide swinging impact on people's monthly fees. If there's a year where we have more stuff to do, it's not like that, has a wild impact on the monthly fee, increase for that year. And the reverse is also true. But obviously a 30-year-old campus, there's always, something that needs to be done. But we budget for what's called a 30% EBITDA, and that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And by using that formula, because I know people often ask, how do we budget? Is there a formula? Sure, we have to estimate what our revenue is going to be and what our expenses are, but then we have a target for a 30% EBITDA, and then that gives us enough capital money to put in the capital bucket so that we can then do the projects that need to happen. So it's a formula that Todd put in place, quite a number of years ago. And if you ask me, in my travels, I think that's one of the most responsible things I've ever seen, and I really commend him for that. Let me see. As far as what we spent on capital projects so far this year and also historically, here's a little chart that has for all of the Eschaton properties, what we've spent in capital projects from 2014 up through the end of September this year. And as you can see, the village are the two big lines at the bottom. And since 2014, we've spent a little over $22 million on capital projects. So that's pretty darn good. For year to date just this year, so just so far as of September 30th for 2021, so just so far this year, we spent $1.2 million, which is a little less than we typically spend. Usually we usually flirt with 2.9 to 3 point something, but again, it's just so many things were on hold because of COVID, and a lot of stuff, even though we were getting close to starting them when COVID hit, we're dusting them off again, but the contractor's got to come over, rebid it, take a look at it again. And it's not quite, but almost starting from scratch on a lot of these things. Let me see. So projects that are completed or in progress for 2021, pretty long list. So we continue to renovate cottages and apartments as if the ones that come available, if they haven't been renovated already. Landscape improvements, outdoor furniture. It's been ordered. It's been paid for. It's sitting on a ship somewhere, and I hope to have it sometime after the first of the year. But it's really pretty, and we will get it eventually. But that's one of those things that I mentioned that we ordered it because we residents want more benches and tables and things outside, and so do I. So it was ordered early in the year. It's still not here. They're shipping some tables, I think, that might be here like in a month. But then the chairs that go with them won't be here until sometime after the first of the year, and they can't even tell us when that'll be yet. So we'll get those when we get them. In the kitchen, we buy new stuff in the kitchen fairly regularly. So far this year they've got a new braising pan, which must be gold plated because it was $21,000. Guess I ought to go in and see what it looks like to appreciate it a little bit better. And then we got some new hot boxes and holding cabinets for the guys that they really appreciated. We installed a new dishwasher. That's a big project. Put a new compressor in one of our chillers up on the roof. That's a $75,000 project. Each chiller has 2 compressors in it. A real important one that I was glad we did, and I'm sure you are too, was we replaced the boilers in the apartment building. All 4 of them. It's a heck of a thing. One of life's simple pleasures, having a hot shower in the morning, and nothing more disappointing than turning on your spigot and cold water comes out. And so I felt so bad about that for a lot of people that experienced that. So anyway, the new boilers are in. They're purring like kittens, and I'm glad we did that one. In the skilled nursing, we bought them a really cool disinfectant machine called a halo fogger, and those are used primarily like in a room if there's been if we had a patient with COVID after they've been discharged. Everything gets cleaned as usual, but then we put this fogger in that emits a mist, hence the name the fogger, and it just completely gets everywhere and it gets in everything and on everything and permeates what surfaces it can and kills the germs. And so that's a really good thing to have. And so I'm glad we have that. We bought the movie room chairs, which are quite nice. We put in 6 automatic door openers around the independent living, apartment building, and I think we did some up at the fitness center as well. So we've done almost all the doors, in the apartment building, and a few other spots. So I think we're starting to come down the home stretch and have them on most every door. In the 2022 budget, I think we still put a little money in to do a few more. We also got these really cool. They're called IN2L mobile displays for assisted living and memory care, and basically they're a TV. It's like a big jumbotron type of TV, but they have all kinds of services on them. For activities with residents, and so there's you can do movies and games and different things, and so it's kind of like Netflix on steroids. But you can also play. There's quizzes and like travel tours, and it's just like having the Library of Congress, on an electronic device. And so the residents just love that. And so you can use it as a TV, you can use it to watch movies, and you can use it to do activities. It even has a bingo program so that, the machines call them bingo. And the activity person go around and help everybody versus, having to, call the numbers and help folks. But if you ever have a chance to see that, Tracy in assisted living has been using it quite a bit, and it's really quite cool. And the residents are really, really liking it, and they're very engaged. My description of it, I can't do it justice verbally. It's one of those things you really got to kind of see. All right, so those are some of the high points of what we did in 2021 so far. And as we get into 2022, more stuff planned, and quite a bit of it. So, additional renovations to cottages and apartments as needed. Keep chipping away at the landscape. It's 37 acres. We can't do the whole place at once. We budget. I wish we could, but everybody wants their place done, and we try and spread it around the campus. So if you want to get on the list, call Jenny down at maintenance, and she can kind of get you on the list, and we'll factor that in as best we can. But anyway, the campus is looking really good. We get a lot of compliments, and it's one of the appearance of the landscape is one thing that helps bring a lot of people into the community. The new assisted living building hopefully will break ground in 2022, as will the new parking lot out by Memory Care. The new parking lot that'll be out by Memory Care will be quite large. It'll have 2 or 3 electric vehicle charging stations put in, and it's currently in the permit stage, but because so many of the county staffers are working from home instead of the office, I'm told the permit process might take about 8 months. I know. So hopefully it takes less than that, but anyway, we'll get those trucks and steamrollers and stuff all lined up and ready to go, and hopefully we can get that done as quick as we can once we get the permits. And then refurbishing, a lot of the common area rooms, so the art studio, chapel, craft room, fitness room in the apartment building, which the fitness center, the little fitness room down by entrance 7, and also the craft room. We have a meeting scheduled with our designer next week, and so I'm hoping that'll be pretty much a done deal there. And I think the contractors have already rebid it, so we're just going over some finishes and stuff like that. So I'm hoping those will get started before the we click over to the new year. We're also going to we're planning to refurbish the Life Enrichment office, and that's where Gay and John and the gang is over there, doing a number of resident meeting rooms and game rooms on the various floors. Doing some more drainage and concrete repair projects around the campus. You saw the big rains this past weekend. We did pretty darn good, all in all, but there's a couple of spots where small lakes started to form, and then when it stopped raining, they receded. But just like with so many of the drainage systems around the campus, 30 years after they're built, a lot of the trees that as they've grown bigger and bigger, well, the roots underground that you can't see, they find their way to the pipes, wrap themselves around them, and pull them apart. And so that's usually what makes the drainage go kaput. And so we just got to go back through and rebuild those, and that's all right. But we're putting in much sturdier pipe than was put in the first place. So I don't know, whoever my successor is 50 years from now will probably be the next person that has to deal with those, not somebody 10 or 15 or 20 years from now. So trying to look out for the next folks, whoever they are. Hopefully they can call me and thank me wherever I am. And then we're going to remodel the inside of the guard shack. That's if you ever looked in there, it's not pretty. It's functional, but it's not pretty. So anyway, they're overdue for a remodel in there. So we plan on doing that. We'll keep chipping away at replacing, kitchen equipment, proactively replacing, air conditioning and heating equipment that we know is at the tail end of its useful life, replacing indoor and outdoor signage, putting in some electric vehicle charging stations around the campus, and upgrading streetlights to LEDs, which is nice because you don't have to change them nearly as often, and they're a little more energy efficient. Refurbishing patient rooms in the care center, refurbishing the ALU dining room and library, replacing some of the memory care living room furniture, replacing some vehicles and golf carts, and remodeling the assisted living lobby. So, long list, a lot of projects, and so hopefully we can get as many of those done as we can during 2022. All right, now we're coming down the home stretch. Are you ready? Everybody buckled up? All right, so a little quick trip down memory lane here as far as the annual rate increases in previous years. So if you look at the little chart here, we go back to 2014. That looks like that was one of the latest years in recent memory at 2.9%. Last year was 4.5%. The average of the last 8 years was 3.68. So that's not bad, all things considered. Last year was a little higher because, again, with COVID and so many, unusual costs and inflation and so forth. And so I know you're dying to hear it. So with no further ado, what number will be on this chart next year when we're standing here? We're in the music room. We should have a drum set so I can get a live drum roll, but we don't have one. So anyway, here we go, 4.85%. And I know there's some yays, there's some boos, but I think the nice thing about that is in the first draft of the budget model, company-wide, we budgeted for a 5% increase, monthly fees, company-wide. And those of you that go to the Financial Review Committee meetings, I committed to sharpening our pencil here and doing the best we could to try and come in a little bit under 5% if we could, even given all the challenges that are out there. And we were able to pull it off and come in a little bit under at 4.85. And this is the lowest increase in the entire Eschaton organization. So I am very proud of that and proud of my team for making that possible because I don't work by myself. It takes all of them to make this place work. So that's the upside of that. So, and then the ancillary fees, and so, guest meals, guest rooms, extra housekeeping and maintenance, those things will go up 4.85% as well. So I think folks' monthly fee increase letters, Nita Cambridge just about has those done, and those will be going out on Monday, November 1st. And so that gives everybody plenty of time to empty the piggy bank and roll up your change and get ready for the increase when it's on the first of the year. So anyway, I hope you're pleased with that. It took a lot of work. I'm very proud of everyone who lives here and all the ideas that you share that help make this possible, and our staff who presents a lot of ideas to make this possible. So we did the best we can, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. So that's my story. And now I will take a drink and entertain a few questions if anybody has them. All right, who'd like to start?
Oh, I'll start. I'm brave.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay. I'm a green person. I'm really concerned about the environment and also about expenses, and it rolls into your concerns too about expenses. Right. Has Eschaton Village Carmichael ever done any feasibility studies on the installation of solar for electricity for our main building? Solar costs are going down right now. Energy costs, as you mentioned, are going up. And there's also talk of the government adding in more rebates. Seems like this might be a good time to start thinking about that.
Right. I appreciate that, and I think you're absolutely right. And historically, because I know it's been looked into a handful of times over the years, and the last assessments where it was going to be cost prohibitive at the time to retrofit everything with everything that's required to have a solar system. That's kind of funny. But anyway, to put it all in place, it was fairly cost prohibitive at the time. But I think you're absolutely right. The costs are starting to come down, and so I think we'll reach a point, hopefully in the not too distant future, to where we can start chipping away at that. And especially,
in the summertime, when Sacramento gets hot, triple digits,
Yes.
and our air conditioning bill in, like July or August, runs just shy of $100,000 a month. So I'd love to see that, chipped away at. So I think, with costs coming down and things being more mainstream, there's, if, SMUD or somebody offers a rebate, that always, helps, or if there's grants out there. In fact, for the electrical vehicle charging stations that, not the ones that will go to the new parking lot, but ones that we're going to put in, on the existing campus, some of those are going to be grant-based. There's some organization, I forget where they get their money, but anyway, you apply with them, and so we've done an Eschaton-wide application with them for however many, and so there's some money out there to do those sorts of things, and so hopefully we can tap some of that. Since we're a tax-exempt organization, we don't get tax benefits by doing energy-saving stuff, but if it is cost-effective and helps bring that power bill down, yeah, I'm all for it.
Great.
Yeah.
So you're saying we wouldn't be eligible for any federal rebates that would be offered?
It depends what the nature of the rebate. If it's some kind of tax rebate, we don't pay federal income taxes.
I see.
Yeah,
Yes.
because we're a tax-exempt organization. But if there was some other rebate that was just,
Took
spend
the-
$100,000 and somebody sends you a check for $25,000 to help offset it, we'd be happy to take that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Great.
the employees that you have to try and hire are the ones that really impact the people here. And so I hear people wondering about the process of getting them approved once you get them on the hook. And it seems to take some time. My first question is this dictated by organizations outside of Eschaton? In other words, the state and the county and this kind of thing that has an impact on what you have to do in order to get them here.
It does. And so when there is a vacant position, there's a number of things that we have to do. So I mean, we'll either go through our Rolodex or applications we have on hand, or we might have to run an ad, to get applicants and then, figure out who we want to hire. And then once we do that, a big chunk of what their pre-employment, or what we call post-offer, work, a lot of it can be done relatively quickly, because we can do some of it in-house. And so their pre-employment physical, more often than not, we do in-house with our nurses, tuberculosis, tests, and a variety of other things. The thing that takes the longest is the criminal background check. And those are running way behind because of just staffing challenges in state and federal government. And so what used to take, maybe 2-3 days, now can take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. And so we can have everything done and the person's chomping at the bit and ready to start. But if their results don't come in, we can't hire them until they come in. And so that's the biggest delay. The thing we've started doing the last couple of months, though, and because historically results were so fast, before COVID, it wasn't much of an issue. But anyway, now that it takes so long. If there's somebody that wants to work here that's worked, in senior living or healthcare to where they had to get a criminal background check before, we can go online and we can basically, associate that they've already been cleared for somebody else.
Yeah.
So we can take their clearance and associate it with us and save the time. And so for folks that meet that that are in the system because they work at a similar type organization, we've done that. And and even Eric, he had a couple people he was putting through that process, and we had him scheduled to start orientation like on Wednesday, and he talked to the place on Tuesday. You got to make a phone call, and there's a little process to go through. And so he talked to him on Monday, and because we wanted to get him in orientation on Wednesday. And come Tuesday, he hadn't heard back, and so he called him and, hey, is there any chance you can get them approved, or get their clearance transferred by tomorrow? And the guy's like, well, hang on, let's just do it now while we're on the phone. So anyway, so they were on the phone. The guy's tapping on his computer, found it all, associated those people's background check with us, and we were good to go, and we were able to get them in the orientation the next day. And so again, where people have worked in senior living or healthcare or some other related profession to where they did the same type of criminal background check, we can fast track that a little bit.
Kind of related to this, are you seeing any impact from the issues that are going on out in the public with respect to people leaving the job because they're being forced to be vaccinated? the nurses, for
Yeah.
instance, they're going to be impacted in this area.
Right. The requirements for us, and it's already in effect in skilled nursing, and then this is going to go into effect for the rest of the campus on the 30th of November. But it's all to start with skilled nursing because they're already doing it. Everybody who received a vaccine is good to go, right? And then anyone who, for whatever who chooses not to get the vaccine, they can still work here as long as they request, and we grant to them in writing, either a medical or a religious exemption request. And so, we have a little process for that, and it's not difficult, and quite a few of those have come in. And so assuming we grant the request, and then probably 99% of the time we will. But anyway, so if, assuming we grant the request, then they don't have to, they can still work without being vaccinated. They just have to be subject to twice weekly testing. And that's in skilled nursing. On the rest of the other sides of the house, if folks that work in memory care, assisted living, or independent living have the vaccine, they'll be good to go. If they choose not to get the vaccine, then they can apply for an exemption. And if they're granted the exemption on this side of the house, then they're subject to testing once a week.
Okay.
You have to make sure. And then, of course, if they test positive, then they go home for a couple of weeks.
And that, of course, all has a big impact on what we've just been talking about.
Yeah, well, and hopefully, there's plenty of folks, nationwide that have had the vaccine and they still get it. They still get COVID. So anyway, so it'll probably still be an issue to varying degrees over the course of the year, whether or not another variant pops up. But I think, our staff, we've been doing pretty good. There's some cases that have popped up here and there, but I think you probably noticed that, the notices to your mailbox have been a lot fewer and farther between than they used to be. And so I think, so just as more people just in general, get the vaccine, and I think just a lot of infection control stuff is just starting to be a lot more second nature to everybody anymore. Wearing their mask where it makes sense, or where they have to, washing their hands and doing all the hygiene and those sorts of things. So we're doing relatively well that way. But yeah, great question. Mary.
Well, first of all, let me say that the 4.85 is honestly better than I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
Amen.
So it might be a little hard to take, but we're okay.
Me too. I was a little worried it might be higher myself as I was working on it. But,
This past year's messed up everything. So I have a question about unvaccinated employees. They're subject to frequent testing, as you just described, and that is an expensive process.
Right.
And I would like to know how that is covered. Is it under your health insurance, or is that a different expense? And if so, is it passed on through the resident fees?
Right. Yeah. Great question. And the nice thing about the testing, because we've been testing endlessly for like a year and a half now. You see the shot get set up and everybody's sitting there getting swabbed. Excuse me. The law got passed fairly early on in the pandemic that health insurance companies have to pay for COVID testing. And so the service that we used when we first set up with them, all the employees, gave them copies of their insurance cards, and so as the employees get tested, the insurance reimburses the company that does the testing. And I don't think I've heard of any employee that works here that doesn't have insurance. So they either have through us, or through a spouse, or through their parents, or whatever. And then our backup plan, though, is if there's somebody that for some reason they're in between plans, or isn't everybody supposed to have insurance? But anyway, if there was somebody that didn't have it, though, we take care of paying the vendor that comes out. And so, but I haven't seen any bills for that. So I think everybody seems to have insurance that's covering it.
Has anyone gotten tired of being tested and have decided to be vaccinated?
Yes.
Good.
I've been told yes. Yeah. Although at a certain point, the first couple of tests, it's very uncomfortable. Well, when the testing first started, I mean, they were like pressing against your brain and going, halfway down your throat, and it was incredibly uncomfortable. And it's gotten a little more tolerable. And the people that do the testing have gotten a little better at it too, I think. But it's still not pleasant. So I think that definitely swayed some people to go ahead and get the shot.
Sort of going along with Mary's question, did EVC apply for any government stimulus or relief fund money in 2021?
We did, and we got about $27,000 in skilled nursing, but our skilled nursing is so small, you know, with only 35 beds, we don't get a whopping ton, but 27,000, we'll take it. Our other care centers got more because they're larger, but yes, we did get a little bit.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So that covered
That
some
helps.
of the expenses, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's all. We'll take it. Yeah, it doesn't hurt. Whether or not and there will be any relief for the you know the other the other levels of care here, the jury's still out on that. I think we have some senior living associations that are out trying to lobby to get providers reimbursement for various expenses because a lot of stuff's expensive. Just all the personal protective equipment we've had to buy, and and when staff gets sick and they got to go home, we have to pay overtime to the existing staff, and so there's a lot of costs that were extraordinary over the course of the year because of COVID.
So
And
are
to the
any
extent
of
they can provide
those
some of these-
are any of those costs covered by our insurance? As Mary was asking about the PPE and things like that.
No,
We have to. Oh,
no, we buy
Interesting.
that. What was nice though. Glad you brought that up. Earlier in the pandemic, it's kind of petered out, but the federal government and the state and county had stockpiles of stuff, and also has some
Right.
pretty big purchasing power. And so earlier on, we were able to go over to the I forget what the letters mean, but the Mohawk Center over by Mather, where they keep where that was a big COVID supply stockpile, and so we could go over there and they'd give us cases of gowns, to the extent they had them, cases of gloves, cases of gowns, and masks and so forth, and so that was a big help, a real big help. But that's kind of petered out, and then of course the folks that sell all that nice PPE, well, what do you think they're doing with their pricing? But anyway, but that was a nice relief there while we had it, and that was at the height of things too, so that made a big difference. I don't know any of you that made your way back into the administrative offices. We turned the conference room into a supply room, and it was almost floor to ceiling with supplies, PPE and disinfectants and all kinds of stuff. So we got a lot out of that, as did everybody else. Now that was a very good thing. So yeah, we were pleased to get that.
I got one more. You were mentioning the 24 hours of paid sick leave. What's the period on that? I mean, how do you generate the 24 hours?
And the 24 hours is we call it's the California paid sick leave, and it kind of sits in a bucket. For each of the each employee has their bucket of benefits, and it kind of sits in its own bucket by itself.
Okay.
Because then we have our own company. We provide paid time off. PTO that can be used for vacation time or sick, or however the employee wants to use it. They get so
Okay.
much per year based on how long they've worked here. But then the sick
Is in
the
that
California
same
sick
pot.
leave sits in its own bucket, and so
Yeah.
basically it reloads once a year,
Oh.
like on their anniversary date. And so let's say somebody starts today. It doesn't land in their bucket until I think 90 days is up, and then they have 24 hours. Right,
Okay.
and then over the course of the year, if they're they have access to use that, and then we pay them for their sick time up to 24 hours, separate. That's in addition to and separate from their PTO.
Yeah.
And then if they use it up, everybody people get the crud or the flu and they're down out for a week or two. But anyway, once they use the California sick leave up, then to the extent they have PTO available, they can use PTO. If you have somebody that's healthy as a horse and doesn't use their California paid sick leave, and let's say at the end of the year, they still have 24 hours left, it doesn't roll to the next year, so they have 48 hours. It just
So
the clock starts over with 24 hours.
It's an annual amount.
Correct.
Okay. The final thing I'd like to say is that you and the people that worked on this budget are to be commended. You've done an excellent job.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We worked hard.
It shows.
Well, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Mary, anything else?
Let's see. Well, there was a question that came up about the annual change in the monthly fee. Is that based upon a formula?
Kind of like I alluded to a little bit ago, where we make our assumptions for what the census and revenue is going to look like. and then we make our assumptions for, what expenses are going to look like. And then we aim for that 30% EBITDA. And so that's kind of the overall target as far as, flushing through all the numbers to come up with what the increase will be. All right.
I have another question.
All righty.
I'm full of them. I'm sorry.
There's a lot of moving parts here. There's lots to
Yes.
talk about.
Okay. We're talking about the refurbishment of the ALU. And it's you're going to have to move people out of that to do some refurbishment of the rooms. And isn't that going to shoot a big hole in your budget? How's that going to work?
Oh, it could. Well, for this, this coming year, we're likely to just do do some common areas, and so like the dining room. While that's, we'll line the contractors up and make sure they have everything ready to go and in their truck before they come over to start the project. But that could, paint, carpet, those sorts of things can usually be done fairly quickly. But we'll probably have to pick another spot for the residents to dine while that's being remodeled. When we get to the point, because the plan is, once we build the new assisted living building, we're going to remodel the apartments in the existing assisted living to make them a little bit larger. We'll likely do that through attrition, and yes, it will have an impact on revenue, because let's say there's two studios we want to that are next door to each other that we want to combine and turn into like a one bedroom. Then we'll have to wait for this person moves out, this person moves out, and then we'll have to do the work. And then move one person in. And so there will be a lot of logistics, but in the industry it's not uncommon, and and like in skilled nursing, and this will happen a little bit when we start refurbishing our rooms in our skilled nursing. But we're going to kind of chip away and do them one at a time, and so that probably won't have a big impact on revenue. But in some of our bigger care centers, they have 150 beds, and so they probably have 90 rooms or something. They'd budget for and then close off, X number of them simultaneously and have the work done. And then once those are done, then move over to another little block and another block. And so that's just something you have to budget for, or you never refurbish your rooms. And eventually they do get kind of tired looking. So it's a bullet you have to bite.
How about the point of service system that you were talking about? Is this in operation at other places that Morrison works with? Is this coming from Morrison, or are we getting it ourselves?
We're getting it ourselves, so we're buying it and it's ours. But Morrison does use it at, they just recently implemented it at, at another community that they manage. And so they're familiar with it. And in fact, on Monday, they're sending a couple of folks over here to give our dining team a demo on how it all works. It was kind of funny because especially our young dining service staff, the servers, most of them, they in fact a lot of them say they were born with an iPhone in their hand. And so a while back I was talking to them at their afternoon meeting before dinner service starts. I was like, what do you guys think about getting rid of your pad and paper, your paper and your pen, and having like an iPad thing? They look nervous. I'm thinking to myself, really? You guys are like born with iPhones in your hand. But they were a little nervous, and of course when the boss comes in, that makes them nervous too, and they don't want to talk a whole lot. But one of them finally said, well, maybe if we could see it first. So I'm like, all right, fair enough. So anyway, so they're flying somebody down, and they're going to do a demo for us on Monday so the staff can see, can touch it, see it, and see how it works and so forth. I think once they see it, they'll like it. But like anything new, you got to get used to it. But once we come out the other side, and then new servers as they come on board, that's all they'll have known, right? So it'll just be the folks that work here now that have to, make it through the transition. But they are all smart. They can do it. I have no doubt. All right, I think we're out of time. So thank you, panelists. Thank you, Channel 88 team. Those of you watching at home, thank you for indulging me. I hope I spoke at a decent pace and didn't ramble on too much. So until this time next year, have a good day.
Great. Thank you, Greg.
All right.
Thank you, audience members. Thank you, crew. We start at 8 a.m.